In the quiet corner of a small-town diner, the smell of fresh coffee lingered in the air. The morning sun spilled gently through the windows, painting the wooden tables in shades of gold. It was the kind of place where strangers became familiar, faces, and where every day started with the comfort of warm smiles and hot cups of coffee. Emma, a young waitress with gentle eyes, moved gracefully between the tables. She had worked here for years, balancing trays with ease and sharing kindness with everyone who walked through the door. Though her life was simple, she carried a warmth that people noticed, even if they couldn't explain it. That morning, Emma noticed a man sitting alone in the corner booth. He was older, his back slightly bent, his coat looking worn from years of use. His hands trembled a little as he held the chipped coffee mug, staring into the dark liquid as though it carried the weight of his thoughts. There was something quiet about him, something that made Emma pause for a moment. Most customers came in with chatter or laughter, but this man seemed wrapped in silence, as though he carried a story only he knew. Emma approached him with a smile, pouring his coffee with care. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. He nodded, politely, but his eyes remained distant, as though lost in another time. She didn't know who he was. To her, he was just another soul passing through. But Emma believed that even the smallest acts of kindness could touch a person's heart in ways unseen. And what Emma could never imagine was that this quiet, lonely man, sitting in her diner, holding a cup of coffee, was not only far from poor, but was in fact a billionaire. A man searching silently for something more valuable than all his wealth. A heart that was pure, a soul that was kind, and perhaps even the woman he had been waiting for all his life. The diner was alive with soft chatter, the clinking of forks against plates, and the hiss of the coffee machine behind the counter. Yet, at the corner booth, silence rested heavy in the air. Emma noticed the old man had ordered only a simple cup of coffee. No eggs, no toast, no pie that the diner was known for. Just coffee. She placed the cup gently before him and added, almost without thinking, a small plate with 2 slices of warm toast. "On the house," she said with a smile, before hurrying away to tend to another table. The old man looked down at the plate. His wrinkled hands rested on the table for a long while before he picked up the toast. Slowly he took a bite, his eyes glistening in a way no one else could see. He was used to people overlooking him, walking past without noticing. But this young woman had offered him more than food. She had offered dignity. Emma didn't stop to wonder if he could afford more. She had seen too many people struggle quietly, proud enough not to ask for help. To her, kindness wasn't about money. It was about making someone feel seen, if only for a moment. Later, when she returned with the coffee pot, she noticed his hands shaking slightly as he tried to sip. Without a word, she steadied the mug for him, her movements gentle, almost like she was caring for her own grandfather. He whispered a thank you, his voice rough from years of silence. Emma nodded with a soft smile, then turned to check on the next table. She didn't linger, didn't expect gratitude. It was simply her way of being. Little did she know that this one act, this quiet moment over a cup of coffee and a plate of toast, would change the course of her entire life. For the man she thought was lonely and poor was watching her closely, not with judgment, but with hope. The kind of hope that comes when you find something you have been searching for all along. As the morning rush slowed, the diner grew quieter. A few customers lingered over their meals, but the clatter of dishes had softened into a gentle hum. Emma moved through the room with practiced ease, her apron tied neatly, her hair pulled back from her face. She wiped the tables one by one, humming faintly, though no one could quite catch the tune. From the corner booth, the old man, Mr. Harris, watched her. His eyes followed her movements, not with the coldness of someone judging, but with a quiet kind of wonder. She never rushed anyone. She never let her smile fade, even when her feet ached or when a customer was short with her. There was a steadiness about her, a grace that didn't come from wealth or beauty alone, but from something much rarer, kindness that was genuine. Emma noticed his gaze for a moment and offered him a small smile, the kind that made her eyes soften. Then she continued her work, never making him feel as though he were out of place. She treated him as she treated everyone, like he belonged. Mr. Harris sat back in his booth, his thoughts drifting. In his world outside this diner, people rushed. Around him, spoke to him with polished words and smiled with rehearsed charm. But here, in this quiet place, he had found something he hadn't seen in years, someone who gave without expecting anything in return. He touched the edge of his mug, his wrinkled fingers trembling slightly. He thought of all the years he had spent searching for meaning, for companionship, for someone who could look past the surface. His wealth had brought him power, but it had also built walls, walls so high that few could see the man behind them. And now, in this little diner, with the smell of coffee in the air and the sound of a waitress humming to herself, he began to wonder if fate had led him here for a reason. Emma didn't know it, but she had just opened a door in the old man's heart. A door that had been locked for a very, very long time. Emma carried the coffee pot back to the corner booth, her steps light, her smile as gentle as always. She tipped the pot, refilling the old man's cup. "There you go, sir," she said kindly. For the first time that morning, Mr. Harris lifted his eyes fully to meet hers. His voice, low and a little rough, broke the silence. "You didn't have to bring me the toast," he said. Emma tilted her head, smiling. "I know. But you looked like you could use it, and sometimes a little food makes the coffee taste better." The old man studied her for a moment. There was no pity in her tone, no judgment, just honesty, simple and kind. He felt something stir inside him, a warmth he hadn't known in years. "You're very kind," he murmured, his words slow, almost unsure. Emma shrugged gently, brushing a strand of hair back from her cheek. "I just think everyone deserves a little kindness. You never know what someone might be going through." Mr. Harris nodded slowly, the corners of his lips almost forming a smile. He had spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from him, his time, his money, his influence, yet here sat a woman who gave freely without even knowing his name. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Emma," she replied. "And you?" He hesitated for a brief second before answering, "Harris." "Well, Mr. Harris," Emma said, her tone light, "I hope this coffee makes your morning a little brighter." With that, she moved on to another table, leaving him with the quiet comfort of her words. Mr. Harris sat back, his coffee warm in his hands, his heart warmer still. It had been a long time since he felt seen, not as the man with fortune, not as a name in the newspapers, but as a person. And for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he found himself looking forward to her next smile, her next kind word. Something inside him whispered that this morning was not just another morning, it was the beginning of something different. By the time Emma stepped out of the diner, the sky had turned shades of pink and purple, fading slowly into night. She clutched a small grocery bag to her chest, its contents light, just a loaf of bread, some milk, and a few vegetables. It wasn't much, but she had learned to make do with what she could. The street was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of scattered lamps. Her shoes clicked gently against the pavement as she made her way home, her uniform still neatly pressed, though she had worn it since early morning. Life hadn't been easy for Emma. Her father had passed away when she was young, and her mother's. Health was fragile, leaving Emma to shoulder responsibilities far beyond her years. She worked long shifts at the diner, not for luxury, but simply to keep the roof over their heads and to make sure her mother had the medicine she needed. Still, despite the weight she carried, Emma chose to meet the world with kindness. She believed that struggles were lighter when you could still smile, still offer warmth to others. To her, life was not about what you had, it was about what you gave. As she reached the old apartment building she called home, she paused for a moment, looking up at the glowing window where her mother waited. A soft smile touched her lips. She knew tomorrow she would return to the diner, to the endless cups of coffee and the faces of strangers. And she would keep doing what she always did, caring, giving, listening. What Emma didn't know was that one of those strangers, the quiet old man with trembling hands, had noticed her in a way no one else had. He had seen not just her kindness, but the strength beneath it. And he carried her smile with him, even as she disappeared into the shadows of the evening. Fate, it seemed, was quietly weaving their paths together, stitch by gentle stitch. The next morning, the bell above the diner door jingled softly, and Emma looked up from behind the counter. To her quiet delight, the old man had returned. He walked in slowly, his steps careful, his coat worn but familiar. Without hesitation, he made his way to the same booth in the corner as though it belonged to him now. Emma hurried over with a smile. "Good morning, Mr. Harris," she greeted, already pouring him a cup of hot coffee. The old man looked at her carefully, his sharp eyes softened by age. "You remembered my name," he said quietly. "Of course," Emma replied with a small laugh. "It's not every day I get to serve a gentleman who enjoys coffee as much as you do." Mr. Harris studied her for a long moment. He had met countless people who remembered his name for what it meant, for power, for wealth, for the opportunities it could bring them. But Emma remembered his name simply because she cared. He wanted to test her kindness, to see if it was as true as it seemed. "I'm afraid I forgot my wallet today," he said slowly, his voice almost hesitant. "Would it be all right if I pay you back tomorrow?" Emma didn't blink, didn't frown, didn't show the slightest sign of annoyance. Instead, she smiled gently and set the cup in front of him. "Don't worry about it, Mr. Harris. Coffee tastes better when shared, not when counted." Her words landed softly, but to the old man, they felt like a stone dropped into the still, waters of his heart rippling through him. He lifted the mug, his hand steadying for the first time. The warmth of the drink seeped into him, but it was nothing compared to the warmth of her simple kindness. As Emma walked away to tend to another table, Mr. Harris sat in the golden sunlight of the diner, wondering if he had finally found what he had been searching for, not in wealth, not in status, but in the heart of a woman who saw everyone as worthy of care. The afternoon sun slanted through the diner windows, bathing the booths in warm, gentle light. The place was quieter now, only a few customers scattered across the room. Emma moved toward the corner booth, coffee pot in hand, her familiar smile ready to greet her quiet guest. But today, Mr. Harris looked different. His eyes, though still weary, carried a spark of something more, like a man who had made a decision. As she refilled his cup, he spoke softly. "Emma," he said, his voice low, thoughtful. "Have you ever felt invisible?" Emma paused, meeting his eyes. It wasn't the kind of question she usually heard from customers. "Sometimes," she admitted honestly. "Life moves so fast. People get so busy. It's easy to feel like no one sees you." The old man nodded slowly. His hands rested on the table, thin and wrinkled, the lines of his life etched deeply into his skin. "I've lived a long time," he said. "I've met many people, but more often than not I wonder if they saw me, or only what they could gain from me. Emma tilted her head gently, her voice kind. Maybe they just didn't know how to look deeper. Some people only see the surface, but that doesn't mean you aren't worth seeing. For a long moment, Mr. Harris was silent. Her words settled into the quiet air, soft but powerful. He had spent years surrounded by people who smiled because of his name, not because of who he was. Yet here was this young woman, speaking to him as if he were simply human. Nothing more, nothing less. He let out a faint chuckle, shaking his head slightly. "You're wise beyond your years, Emma." She smiled, her cheeks warming, but she didn't reply. She just moved on to the next table, leaving him with his coffee and his thoughts. And for the first time in many years, Mr. Harris felt seen, not for what he had, not for what he could give, but for who he was. And that feeling stayed with him long after she walked away. As the day faded into evening, the diner glowed with warm light, the kind that made shadows dance softly against the walls. Emma carried a plate of warm apple pie to the corner booth, setting it gently before Mr. Harris. "On the house," she said with her usual smile. He raised his brows slightly. "You'll go out of business feeding me for free," he teased, though his voice carried a warmth that hadn't been there before. Emma laughed softly. "Some things are worth more than money, Mr. Harris." He studied her for a moment, then reached into his coat pocket. With slow, deliberate hands, he pulled out a polished silver pocket watch and placed it on the table. Its surface gleamed in the golden light, the kind of craftsmanship that spoke of wealth and history. Emma's eyes widened slightly. She had seen old watches before, but never one so fine, so carefully made. It looked like something belonging to another world, one far beyond the modest diner she called home. "That's beautiful," she said softly, unable to hide her awe. Mr. Harris gave a faint smile, his gaze fixed on the watch. "It's been in my family for generations. Reminder of where I came from, and perhaps where I'm going." Emma tilted her head, curious but polite enough not to ask too much. She only said, "It must mean a lot to you." "It does," he replied, "but what I value most isn't what this watch is worth. It's what it represents. Time. The one thing we can never buy back." Emma felt his words settle in her chest. She nodded slowly, sensing layers behind his simple statement, though she didn't press for more. As she walked away to tend to another table, Mr. Harris watched her carefully. He wondered if she noticed the clues, the quiet signs that he was more than the frail old man in the booth. He wanted her to see him, but not for his fortune, for the man beneath it all. And as the silver watch gleamed under the soft diner lights, he thought to himself, perhaps she already does. The diner had grown quiet as night settled outside. The chairs were stacked on some tables, and the hum of the neon sign flickered faintly in the window. Only one booth remained occupied, the corner booth, where Mr. Harris sat with his coffee untouched, waiting. Emma approached with the pot, ready to pour him a final refill before closing. But she stopped when she noticed the papers spread neatly across his table, along with the gleaming pocket watch and a gold pen. They looked so out of place, so polished and elegant against the diner's simple wooden surface. "Mr. Harris?" she asked softly, curiosity in her tone. He looked up at her, his eyes steady, no longer guarded. "Emma, there's something I should tell you. I haven't been completely honest about who I am." Emma blinked, her brows knitting. "What do you mean?" He folded his hands over the papers, leaning forward. "I am not just an old man, passing through town. My name is James Harris. I own several companies, investments, and more wealth than I care to admit. Most people know me as a billionaire, but here, I wanted to be just a man drinking coffee in the corner. For a moment, Emma couldn't speak. Her lips parted slightly, her hands tightening on the handle of the coffee pot. The man she thought had nothing, the man she gave free toast to, was in fact one of the richest men in the country. "A billionaire?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. He nodded gently. "Yes. But money has never brought me what I truly wanted. For years I've been searching for something. Someone. Not someone drawn to my wealth, but someone whose heart is pure. And Emma, in your kindness, I found what I've been missing." Emma's chest tightened. She shook her head softly, her voice trembling. "But I didn't do anything special. I just served you coffee." Mr. Harris's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "Sometimes, Emma, the smallest things reveal the truest heart." And with those words, the air in the quiet diner shifted. Forever. The dawn broke quietly over the little town, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. The diner stood still, its neon sign dimmed, its windows glowing faintly with the last warmth of the night. Outside, Emma stepped onto the quiet street, her apron wrinkled, her eyes still wide from the truth she had learned only hours before. Beside her stood Mr. Harris, not just the frail old man she thought she knew, but the billionaire who had hidden his identity beneath a worn coat and trembling hands. Yet in the soft morning light, he looked nothing like a man of money. He looked simply human, his eyes filled with something she had not seen before. Hope. "Emma," he said gently, his voice carrying a quiet strength. "All my life I have been surrounded by wealth, but none of it has ever given me what you gave me without thinking. Kindness, warmth, a reason to believe in people again. You've shown me that what I was searching for was not money, not power, but a heart like yours." Emma's chest ached with emotion. She shook her head, still overwhelmed. "But I'm just a waitress," she whispered. "I don't belong in your world." Mr. Harris smiled faintly, his hand extending toward her. "Emma, it is not about belonging to my world. It is about building a world together, one filled with kindness, love, and honesty. That is what I have been searching for. That is what I see in you." For a long moment, Emma stood frozen, the cool morning air brushing her face. Then slowly, she placed her hand into his. His grip was gentle, but it carried a promise of trust, of companionship, of something greater than wealth could ever buy. And as the first rays of sunlight touched the quiet street, Emma realized that sometimes the smallest act, like buying a man a simple cup of coffee, could open the door to a love and a future she never dreamed possible. For in kindness, they had found each other, and in each other, they had found home.